Hey, we had a great first session. Thanks everybody for chiming in, and we actually wrapped up that session just kind of thinking about how AI, yes, how's it going to affect our organizations, but how's it going to affect consumer behavior? Who wants to kind of take the first pass at how you think it's going to affect consumer behavior and the impact that's going to have?
I can go first. So we've been talking a little bit about websites and how they stay relevant or become irrelevant along the way. And one thing we've been talking about just again in the last couple of weeks is our comm strategy. Are we making sure that we are talking to publications and working with publications that are pulling higher in the AI search results on Google and things like that have better search rankings than our site does? So potentially shifting even a little bit more of a heavier focus into that earned media aspect that can help drive some of that messaging, where our more like BuzzFeed style articles fall lower in the searches now. And I think it's a similar approach kind of to when that listicle style of content came out and everyone kind of had to reshift how they were thinking about writing for their own site. Now it's almost the reverse of how are we thinking about how other people are talking about us to do this kind of deeper storytelling that, especially on a state level, we just don't have the capacity to always do.
Did you see MMGY just released a study that earned media has higher value for LLMs specifically than almost any other kind of media out there? Have you guys seen that yet?
I haven't, but I'm not surprised. But that's great. Yeah.
So I think that speaks to the fact that earned media is going to continue to be really important, at least based on the study that I saw that MMGY put out.
What did it say about owned media? Because I think that's going to go away with AI. With
you think
the websites.
Owned media is going to go away?
Owned media, I think.
Tell me more.
I just think I think Allison mentioned it, the websites are not going to be used as much, and especially with the consumers. I don't think they're using it as much now as they have in the past, because they can find the information on their own. They don't have to. Although, if you see research, they always say the DMO website is still high on the list of consumer searches, but I think that is eventually going to go away.
I will counter that. I'll say, I think there are a lot of companies that make their money on websites, and so they are going to find ways to block AI. So Cloudflare, I think the CEO was with the New York Times and basically said that Cloudflare, which powers most of the web, is looking for ways to block AI from like crawling your site so that you can monetize it if you want and sell that data to AI. Because if you think about it, if they can't, then their data is going to dry up and they're not going to be able to talk about you in the same kind of way that they would if they got it. So I could see, agencies saying, well, we've implemented Cloudflare, so you're going to still be around. And if you want to monetize it, we've found a way to make you some money with Google or whoever. And if they stop paying us, then we'll stop the pipe of information that they need to continue to power their engine. I could see that being a deterrent from websites going away.
But if we were to do that and consumers are mainly going on LLMs more and more, that's going to keep them away from even being relevant or seen where a consumer is going to go. Most of them aren't going to go to websites anymore, and that's my opinion. When I search something, like when I go travel, I'm starting to venture more to ChatGPT and not even Google. Google, of course, is continuing to grow. So that's just me as a person. So I do see Google being incredibly relevant even now. Their Q4 or their Q3 was just like skyrocketing still. So there has been a lot of conversations on, Google's going to be irrelevant. It's not true at all. But as a consumer that has adopted AI and uses it and doesn't go to a website, how is that going to change? I mean, this is just an open-ended question. Like, what is the downfall of using Cloudflare and just blocking?
I don't know. I mean, so I recently researched 2 cars. I was like, which one's faster and cheaper? And like, I want the cheapest but fastest. I don't care about any bells and whistles. And to your point, I did not go to the website initially, but when I finally wanted to like really see pictures and see the thing, I did click it. I think what it could mean is that, we talk about marketable trips. Like, what are the trips that actually could make a decision to come to us? I think you'd see quality of engagement go up, even though volume go down. And we just have to train our communities to say, hey, look, the number's way down, But on the whole, the lift is way up. Our impact has never been greater. And you come up with ways to like feed AI. So it's almost like AI EO, like AI engine optimization. Like how do we get it what it needs to send the real ones to us? But at the end of the day, we don't care. We need them to come to the destination and put money in the hotel to fund our thing. So, I mean, I'm thinking out loud, so I know.
I see it, and this is coming from someone who is launching a website in a week. So
This is real.
yeah, so this is therapy. This is real. Yeah, I see AI having a role. I think right now, and this could change in a week, 30 days. At the top and the bottom of the funnel. I do think that, to your point, it's going to be used more for. I want a beach destination that's within a quick flight or however many drive. It's just going to get you on the list, and then I think it comes back around when it comes to okay, I'm now here. What do I do? Where do I go? It does that you can't use it in the mid-level. Not that the people aren't going to be using it to actually build out their full itineraries, but I think right now like those are maybe the sweet spots where it could help extend stay and also kind of get us on top of the radar. But I still believe that our content is going to be where in the middle of the funnel, where I think our own content, is going to still have the biggest bang for our buck in value. And so to your point, I'm asking my team every day, like, what are we doing to make sure that we're feeding, even though we're launching this new website in a week, I don't even care about it because the majority of the website traffic to our website, I think in the next 2 years is going to be large language models. So how do we make sure we're feeding it, our content to them? It doesn't really matter how pretty and cool it looks, or it won't soon enough. It's really going to be about the content that's there. So it's something that we're looping a bit of grappling with. But then to your point, what we do want to do to make sure that we take advantage of the traffic that does get to our site is using AI to have a more customized, tailored, content for that individual. So we're working with Algolia, which is a AI-powered search function that has not been in the DMO space. I believe we're their first DMO partner to work with. So I'll let you know.
We've used them.
Oh, have you? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
for years.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Very
Here, so
happy.
yes. Smart decision.
How do you spell that? Or
ALGOLI.
Algolia. It's a search function.
And it basically is going to crawl and creep on you, figure out who you are so that it can give you the best, most accurate content. And that's my way of summarizing it. But
We're not using every feature, but it was our search function from the time we launched our current website, which was 2020. So we've been very happy with it, but we need to eke up and look at all their capabilities because I don't think we're using it to the fullest extent.
They're big in their retail space, which is what attracted us to them. So trying to take to your point earlier, which is I think should be a trend for any of these topics today. Like how do you stay up on all these 4 or 5 things? Get out of the DMO space. Go to South by Southwest. Yeah. Love South by Southwest. It's been too long. I used to go all the time. But get out of our DMO conferences and go attend bigger picture stuff in different industries, because that's where the real innovation is ahead of us, to our point, and where we can then bring those ideas back with more thought out, tangible, how do I, or often in the DMO space, we're like, should we? What does it look like? But other industries are, here's the road book, or here's the roadmap, and here's how to do it. Yeah.
That's why the echo chamber is a little dangerous in our space, is we kind of miss out on some of the innovations that happen outside of the industry. You talked about making sure that you're optimizing for LLM traffic, and there's a couple things that I think are really interesting. Number one is SEO, when it started, you used to be able to put like white text on a white background and just do it. Like you could game the system, and I don't think there's the same way to game the system with LLM optimization. It's the quality of the content that it can find, right? And so I do think quality of content is really, really critical in making sure that the DMO is part of what's being delivered. And this is where I may push back on your comments of, well, what if we blocked it and monetized it? Well, now all the information you've worked so hard to create isn't showing up in those results. And so for me, I would rather make sure that, because, and Tom, your comment of, well, maybe the websites won't exist. I don't know that they won't exist, but yes, they may not be a factor in the decision-making process. However, if you have such good content that you're viewed as a thought leader by the LLMs and your content shows up in the results, that's where the value comes in. But the place where you can bypass all of this is being in the prompt. Because if somebody puts your information in the prompt, of course you're going to be in the output, and that's a branding conversation, right? So anyway, I think those are a few things to think about as we're thinking about how to optimize for LLMs.
Because at the end of the day, I don't care if someone's being inspired from my Instagram or Forbes or my website. If they're coming and spending money in Pennsylvania, that's all that matters.
We started taking our blogs and plugging them into ChatGPT and asking, like, from an LLM perspective, how do we make this relevant? Use SEO best practices and LLM best practices. And we've given our staff writer that writes the majority of our long form content to make sure all the keywords are in there. We have that TLDR bullet point style at the bottom of every blog or at the top, seeing how that works. But we are combing through every blog right now and making it friendly to a large language model so that it does come up. Fortunately for Corpus Christi, there's not a lot of noise in the media space for publications or news articles. Fortunately, we have already gained that trust of being a top search on Google, and it is also on an LLM. So we do, I feel, have that advantage to start with and continue the momentum. But when I see the bigger cities that have multiple mediums, it's very hard for them to get up at the top as that initial thought leader of their destination, planning out itineraries. So it's finding a way to get in front of it as soon as possible so that you can have that space.
We are at Visit Mesa. We are working with Madden, and they're optimizing our website for our GEO, and it's going to be part of our KPI starting next month. So, I mean, this is it. It's happening, and we're creating content based on where we know that actually data is showing us where the people are finding us, and that's now the way.
So it's still mostly Simple View and Tempest doing the websites in the industry? Because we're going to go through a rebranding in next year.
It's kind of all over the place with what I'm seeing. That is definitely, like, they still have the largest market share, I would say, from a website perspective. But I have seen more destinations having their agency develop the site. So it kind of depends. I don't know if I can speak at scale to that, but that's what I'm seeing kind of across the board is they still have a high market share, but more and more people are branching out beyond the template because the sea of sameness is a problem.
When we went to RFP, we wanted the end result to be a finalist from within the industry, one of the known players that we talked about today. And then we wanted like a disruptor, someone that has never done tourism before, but just as maybe best in class, and we got that. And it was a really tough decision for the team. And ultimately we decided to go with the known entity in our industry, because at the end of the day, we were afraid that although the end result may have been better, that the learning curve we might have needed to go outside wasn't worth it. Well, irony is it's taken us almost twice as long as this website was supposed to launch. So without naming anyone, that pain point is real. But we were open. We wanted to try to see if we could do it. And I think to your point, more destinations are going to start to look that way as well.
We did the same thing, but we ended up going with the disruptor.
Yeah, and
We've never looked back.
Awesome.
I think because I didn't come from within the industry, when we were looking at just all of our agency contracts, we brought in all new, except for one. And we've been thrilled. That's how we got Algolia. That's how we find out about things that are outside of the industry. And we really felt like it got us out of that sea of sameness. They didn't have a template. They didn't have a starting point.
Yeah.
We wanted revolution. So they were perfectly happy to just build it from scratch. And we're thrilled.
In a fight for relevance, a template is a very, very dangerous place to be.
Absolutely. One other thing I wanted to throw out, and I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but for the younger generations that work for us, they are very opposed to AI because of the sustainability issues and the water and the resources that it uses. They're actually, aside from the oldest of them that are just challenged by technology, the youngest are pushing back a little bit because of that. I don't know if any of you are hearing about that issue.
Someone on my team. My core team is using it on a regular basis. Half of that team, 50% of it, right, is in that boat.
Yeah.
And that's their hesitation.
I think
at times they're even like, don't tell it thank you, don't tell it, whatever, like less prompts is more because of the environmental impact of it. And I get that, but I'm also like, the best way for it to learn you is to act more human and to treat it more human so that it can understand what it's doing. If you give it no feedback at the end, like that was good or whatever, how can it learn? So I am struggling with it because I believe and respect, their point of view on that.
I just think that's another reason why for younger generations we have to look beyond just AI, right? TikTok is where my kids, that's the only place they go for trip planning information. And so making sure that we're not just putting all our eggs in one basket because it's us that loves AI. I don't know about those coming next.
I can run with that. I'll run with that for a minute because I was curious everybody's perspective on social media as a trip planning tool. And for us, we kind of are looking at this a little bit at like an intersection of AI meets social media. We're working with Stellar. We've had some conversations with Birdly about we're really maybe even zooming back, like how do we orchestrate the storytelling rather than us being the ones to tell that story? So for us, it's working with these influencers who are coming into our destination. They are highlighting the whole trip. We're kind of curating that together, whether that's a 4-day, 3-night, whatever the case might be. But then these influencers have their own sites, right, that are being powered by the Birdleys and the Stellars. And now I guess like we're in the midst of like this integration. I mentioned Mindtrip earlier, where there's these magic links, right? Like, and we can take the magic link from the post that the influencer put together, and we can actually populate that into Mindtrip, and Mindtrip will map the whole thing out. So you can see across the destination where everybody went. They can tweak it so that maybe it was a 4-day, 3-night. They want a 3-day, 2-night. So maybe it's opening it up for conversation, like how everybody is looking at TikTok or Instagram and figuring out how to monetize the impact on that from visitation. The Birdleys and the Stellars, I think, are helping us put like a tangible booking number next to it in cases that we've never really had access to before.
Can I pause you on that?
Go ahead,
I want to pause you there because Trish asked a question that I don't think anybody got the opportunity to like really expound on. Is like, if you have a younger person on your staff that is resistant to AI because of some of the environmental impact issues that come along with it, how are you addressing that? Or even if you're not having that, how do you think about that? Maybe some ideas that Trish could run with back to the team.
We haven't had any of that on our...
Neither. No.
Neither.
We've had a mention of it from a couple of team members, but they didn't push back. They just said how it was bad. They just noted that it was bad.
Yeah. Do you want my opinion?
Yeah.
I think that this is one of those situations where the world is going to evolve with or without us. And I think the impact of not utilizing it is actually going to be worse for the destination than the possible environmental impact from your team members using it compared to the scale that it's being used. And so I think if my job is to make sure that the DMO continues to push forward and stays relevant and is competitive with other destinations, I understand those factors, but somebody else is going to get in front of us if we don't utilize it. And so I know that's not like the most, I guess, earth-conscious answer, and I understand that entirely. But in a competitive environment, which you're absolutely in, those jobs will not be able to be maintained if you start to underperform significantly because you haven't evolved at the rate of the industry. So I think that's it is a big luxury for someone who's coming into an organization and is relatively young in an organization to say, I don't want to use this because of the environmental impact, but in a competitive set, it's going to be really tough for them to succeed without using it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, and that's sort of the approach that we've taken. I was trying to connect the dot with that younger generation, though, and is there going to be resistance across that group who's going to come into some income very soon and be able to be the trip planners and the travelers? Are they going to embrace AI the same way that we are if they're also concerned about its impact on the environment?
So from a consumer behavior standpoint,
Exactly.
more so than policy.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that
that's
was
interesting.
sorry if I didn't make
misunderstood
that
your question,
connection
yeah.
clearly. That's why I went to TikTok, because is AI really gonna be their primary tool? Or are they gonna look at other things that they feel like aren't having the same kind of detriment? to the earth.
I have much less insight on that.
But all of those platforms are going to be using AI, so really,
Well,
they can't get
and
around
that's
it.
true too.
Let's
That's
be
true
honest,
too.
like,
And
it's-
some of those TikToks are
yeah.
completely fake, and all that. But it's just it's just interesting because, as I mentioned, my daughter won't go to ChatGPT and put something in, but she'll TikTok either for planning or even in destination. Okay, now what am I going to do that I'm here? That's the primary focus.
I know this is not a topic on the agenda. I don't want to derail, so we can just laugh or nod our heads or tell me I'm crazy and we can move on. But it relates. One thing that I have noticed, and I'm curious if you guys are or have as well, is going back to that same generation. And this is not meant as a slam. It's just an interesting observation. I feel like they are, compared to any other generation I've been around, a lot more aligned about themselves and their own identity and where they're going. And it's harder for me to get them to see my point of view as a leader in that same dichotomy of this is the right thing for the organization. It's harder for them, I feel like, to understand that some of the decisions that we might make or some of the points of view that we might have, even if they don't agree with it, is because it is best for the organization. And they have a harder time, I feel, kind of accepting that or being okay with that. Their own self-identity seems to be...
I'm dying to hear what Timothy thinks.
Yeah, I don't know, anyway, and maybe this is just me and my team. I don't know. And again, I know it's not a topic. But it triggered me with that thought because that's anyway.
As long as we come back to Scott's
Yes.
question next, but I want to hear what you think, Timothy.
I'm going to agree because we were having a conversation about that before we came back in. Sometimes when I have ideas, I go to my team and I go, hey, hit this idea. I get nothing. I get nothing from them. And I think my idea is a great idea. Yeah. And so I walk away from the conversation a little bit mad because I'm like, why don't you think this is great? But some people need to process information a little differently, so they didn't have to come back to go, oh, now I see what you were saying. But I do think, certainly it's been my experience, that some of our younger employees think very, again, themselves and not organizationally. And I think as the conversation goes on today, as we talk about DMOs, that's a real challenge, because if we can't overcome that challenge, then engaging with our stakeholders and our partners become that much more challenging, in my opinion. And so I would say that it comes down to maybe who we're hiring and bringing into our organizations, and are they the right people with the right thought processes for what we're doing? Because again, what we do has tremendous value for our communities. I think we're all like a little secret mafia, like we're all in it together. But if we don't bring in the right people who can be comfortable out in public talking about those positive things that we're doing, then I think it hurts our industry.
Timothy, I've had a lot of great ideas and had the same response. But the feedback I got is like, we want to be part of the creative process. We want to help build campaigns, because I would just run with a campaign and go with it. So now each of my team members have to build out a campaign. And now they're learning what I've been going through and the struggles, but it's really building up that depth of talent too. And they're coming up with really good ideas. I don't know if they're AI generated, but that's okay. They're still going through that. So yeah, I had to learn that. Share.
With Gen Z, they're very loud and bold in their opinions, and I think that's something we could all learn from, and how they are not afraid. They're not afraid to speak their minds, and of course that does come with its challenges from an organizational perspective. But I have a 6-year-old, and he is in the Gen Alpha category, and Gen Alpha is going to be deemed, from what I've been hearing, it's Gen A, Gen AI. They're the first generation that is growing into this being normal. They're the iPad kids. They're the ones that are always on YouTube. They're digesting content and information at a speed that we had never seen in previous generations. And from what we're seeing with AI and the Gen Z model and how they actually use it. And I see this on TikTok sometimes, that they're using ChatGPT as therapists. And that is alarming, one, but it's conversational AI. It's conversations. They want to have conversations with these LLMs. So the conversational component, I think when this generation starts getting older and starts adapting more to the AI, I think, to your point, Adam, it's going to take over regardless of how people feel about it. I don't know if y'all have seen the movie Her, where he is he has an AI partner and forms a romantic relationship with an AI. And this is a sci-fi movie. But it is becoming real. I mean, if you look
Isn't there an app right now?
Grok. Grok
yeah.
AI released a AI girlfriend that you could have. It's funny right now. It's funny right now. But it is alarming because as we start becoming less connected as humans and start having these relationships or these conversations with an LLM in a conversational way, it does force us to say, well, how can we be more human and connect people and use this in a way that isn't going to harm society as a whole? And it does get a little scary because this is real. People are really using GPTs as therapists right now. They're replacing therapy with a GPT agent. But sometimes if you look at the cognitive behavioral therapy and you put everything in there, it can sometimes spit things out better than your therapist. So how do we make sure that we're not separating ourselves from that?
It's a good question. I think we're getting into a territory that I think is very societally relevant. I'm not sure we're getting into a territory where we're going to be able to have an industry level solution. So I almost wonder if it would make sense for us to maybe put a pin in that and we'll discuss it over dinner or something. But I think it's an important question. And most importantly, is this new generation coming up, if they're using it as their therapist, if they're using it even as their significant other, they're taking whatever it says as truth. And so I think what it reinforces is it's really important that we're a part of the output or even a part of the prompt if we want to actually have any communication with that group. I want to come back because we made Scott wait for a really long time for the answer to his question. But social media as a trip planning tool, where is it today? Where's it going?
Can I follow up? Because I was going to ask him, could you just define, because I don't know, what is a magic link? And you said it works with regard to booking. It can make it more tangible. Can you just...
Yeah. So there's these platforms now, Birdly being one of them, Stellar. I'm not sure if anybody has experience working with them or just kind of at the tip of the iceberg with it. But you're able to work with content creators, influencers that fit the profile of what you're trying to obviously highlight for your destination. They are powered through the platforms, let's call it Birdly. And Birdly has relationships throughout the hotel industry, throughout the travel industry. So they're helping that content creator put together a booking platform that their content will actually direct the end user over to. So let's say you're following Visit Anaheim, or you're following this content creator. You have the trust built up with them because you're following them. You're seeing all the content that they're putting forward. They're saying you should go to Anaheim for a 3-day, 2-night. Look at all the amazing things that we did. Click here to book. It's taking you over to a website, so websites aren't going away just yet. And through that, you can either book the exact trip that they experienced when they were in destination, or there's a concierge that will let you tweak that based on what your needs are. So maybe the trip that they went on was a married couple went and experienced all of the things from an adult perspective, but you have 2 kids, you want to tweak it to a family of 4, and you want to go for 4 days, 3 nights. The concierge will tweak that trip for you entirely. And then obviously as a result of that, we're getting insights through that partnership based on the number of bookings that the content creator was able to generate through their followership. The part that I find even more interesting maybe than that is that, and I'll use Mindtrip as the example, that Mindtrip has this technology where you can take the link from that post, right? So from the content creator that would have posted about Anaheim, and let's say that they were highlighting the top 7 rooftop bars for you to go and visit while you were in destination. You're you're pasting that link into Mindtrip, and it will map out where all 7 of those bars or rooftop bars ultimately are. So you have the trip planning mechanism from the content creator, but then Trish, to your point, like when they're actually maybe in destination and looking for what to do, whether that's through TikTok or whatever, now you're actually able to help them map out like, hey, if you want to hit all of these hot spots, whatever the case might be, so rooftop bars or top places to eat, whatever it is, you can map it out, you can see the reviews, you can kind of interact with it as you would like a normal chat GPT tool, albeit through the Mindtrip platform that's also directing that traffic over to our site where that lives. So a lot there, right, to digest. But just kind of curious, like how everybody is approaching the social media monetization tool, how we're looking at that. To me, that was the first time that I could actually point and say that content creator generated X number of room nights and trips to my destination. So yeah, pause there.
We talked with them last year, but ultimately decided not to pull the trigger on the campaign. I can't really remember the exact reasons why, but I did like it for the reasons that you do.
Anybody else have comments there?
It's always been a challenge with social media campaigns is whether they could produce room nights. And as Trish knows with a TID, and I know from a TID, anybody else knows from a TID, that's all they want is room nights and room night revenues. So I've been interested in learning more about that. Yeah.
With social specifically, it has so much of the attention of our audience, right? And so if you think about everybody on their phone right now would be embarrassed if their screen time was shared with the other people in this room, and I bet it's actually probably the same for everybody. But every time I look at it every week, I'm like, again, you know? And if you divide that screen time out, the percentage of that that's actually spent on social apps is very, very high. And it's a game of attention. And right now the attention is there. And so the question is, for me, not necessarily social as a trip planning tool specifically, because I'm not sure culturally it's gotten to the point where it's like, oh, I'm gonna plan a trip, let's open up Instagram and let's search something. Like, I'm not sure we're there, but social media as a trip inspiration tool, there is no better tool. And I really, as I talked a little bit about this when we were in Pennsylvania, Katie, if attention is the primary thing that we're after, we've always based advertising on an interruption to attention. So if you think about like a TV ad, you were watching a program that you intentionally wanted to watch, then it got interrupted, the ad came on, which one of the things we talked about was, well, the people in your life that are like that are like interrupting you or asking for something when you don't want to be asked for something, those are energy takers in your life, right? And yet we use energy taking as a method of, our primary method of communication, right? Social media is a place where people consume entertaining content because they want it. That's where their attention already is, and you can either be an interruption or you can be a positive addition to that experience. And my opinion on social media as a trip planning tool is we need to be creating content that captures their attention on social without having to pay for it. And if we figure that out, the trip planning portion of it's gonna come because we've inspired them to wanna go there. And so I actually think there is a massive underinvestment in organic, high volume organic social content in the destination marketing space because we're making media decisions based on eyeballs that a media platform or outlet is telling us that they have with no guarantee that our message is gonna matter to them. But when we do high volume organic social testing, if somebody clicks on that or if they comment on it or if they share it, now you have data that demonstrates that this is what they care about. That's where your media dollars should go. You should spike something that they've demonstrated interest in as opposed to trying to interrupt them and convince them to book a trip to your destination.
Yeah, I would completely agree on the organic side. I think that ultimately it's that yin-yang though for us in the same vein. Like if somebody sees Visit Anaheim show up in their feed, they know we're biased, right? Like come visit Anaheim. If you're for us, and like this is where we're cool, we'll do this next year and I'll tell you how it went, right? But if we're partnering, right, like with that content creator who has that trusted audience, who is following them for a specific reason, there's a different trust that's built into that conversation. And sure, like absolutely, I think all of us would unequivocally agree, social media has and will continue to be used as an inspiration tool. Where I think it's interesting is that we have seen that shift, that people want to know what they're doing when they get there. They want to know why they should go there. So it's moving from that upper funnel, and it's moving, I hate even using the word funnel, but it's moving people down into that, right? And so, yeah, I think that is the interesting part of it, and then how that interfaces with AI ultimately, I think, will be the next step. Maybe we're jumping the gun on it, but yeah, that would be my response back to that.
I like it.
Adam, a follow-up question I'd like to ask is, has AI changed the way you target audiences and customers? Because I just had someone suggest, hey, you should concentrate on DC. I'm like, no, quack. We've been doing that for 20 years. And we used to saturate DC, Baltimore, Philly, but now through digital marketing platforms, we're just targeting qualified travel intenders. That's 90% of our money is going into that. I was wondering if that's something everybody's doing now, or because they're locating the people that are looking at Virginia, looking at Richmond, looking at Baltimore.
Meaning you've moved your strategy, I want to make sure I heard you right. So you've moved your strategy from maybe being more DMA focused to just looking at the wherever, as long as you've got the following criteria and higher.
And is AI helping you select that? That's what
they're
you're
helping
saying?
the digital marketing platforms. So we tell them, we want, families, or we want someone's looking for outdoors, and they're targeting those people. And they've given me phrases that made me a hero in the boardroom, like, we're always on. Or today we're going to partake in competitive conquesting. And they're thinking, oh, that sounds so mean. I'm thinking, well, Baltimore's doing that to us. So, but yeah, that's what our focus is now. 90% of our money is going to that.
I want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, tell me your thoughts.
On
Maybe
which thing?
On the
just targeting
qualified instead of just
travel.
DMA focused, being more centered around AI indicators of interest for that specific group. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So they could be in San Francisco, and we'll serve up an ad because they've looked at something in Virginia or something on the East Coast.
Well, so that would be how I'd push back on the interruption thing, is that I see banner ads now, and I like them because they're relevant. So I think if you use data for relevant placements, then it can be incredibly effective. And it's like that. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. DC is where we go. But if you try to go to Dallas, like, I might be like, well, I don't know why I should do this. Whereas DC has an affinity. And if you're currently netting, 50% of in-market travelers from DC and you go to 60, like, that's a big jump. And then you can start to expand out in conquest and all that. So yeah, I would, my gut would say that seems right.
Yeah, the drawback is with those platforms that they can only track probably like 30%. Then they get blocked somewhere along the line. But we'll take 30% because in my mind, I just times it by 4, and that's the number I go with. No, I don't do that. But that's the only drawback. I just wonder how everybody else is maybe using AI in targeting.
What platform are you using that's doing that? Just out of curiosity.
Sojourner and Adara, both are doing that for us.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah, we do something similar, but we do have still a combination of geo-targets as well as intenders, and then we also create lookalikes from the folks that are visiting. Our media agency is actually they have built their own AI tool, and we don't use a media company that's within hospitality and tourism. They're completely separate, but they've built their own tool which feeds in data from all the different platforms that they're using, and that helps us generate very targeted audiences as well as places. And to your point, it could just be a travel intender from wherever. So, but we do a combination.
Just stay away from our traffic.
No, we can't. Sorry.
This is why you're across the table from each other.
We're friends.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Next to Pennsylvania, though. Yeah. So.
Is there anybody else that wants to chime in with AI-specific commentary? Otherwise, I'd love to move on to our next topic. Okay. So I want to talk about proving value and measurement, and there's 2 components to this. Number one, and by the way, we're going to talk about this differently because of how your episode has performed of Destination Discourse, Emily.
With all my family.
I think you brought up a topic that is critical for us to discuss as a group. So I want to start with how important should advocacy be in the CMO's role, or is that a different role in the organization? And I actually am going to let Emily tee this up instead of me going too deep into it. But then the second half is, I want to know specifically, how are you proving your value to your community, and how are you making sure that your stakeholders are on board with you? How are you marketing the marketing, right? So let's start, Emily, if maybe you could talk a little bit about the advocacy conversation we had.
Sure. DMOs, as we know it, are adopting many more challenges, many more things that we have to do to, one, stay relevant, two, be the connector. And what's difficult in many cities is there are so many silos for who you need to work with to make sure that you are building that quality of life for your residents. You look at the chamber and economic development, you look at city government, and sometimes those guys have been in those seats for years and years and years and have the same conversations, the same amount of people, and they don't often like to play super nice if we're going in and saying that from an economic development standpoint, this is what we're seeing from the residents, this is what we should do, let's partner and collaborate. And oftentimes those economic development corporations are like, what are you doing stepping on my toes? This is what I do. I don't understand why we're collaborating. I don't understand why we're doing that. And it's difficult because there are many different structures from every city entity, county entity, state entity, where the DMO space is sometimes in the city government. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's TIDs, then there's board. It's just so difficult to get everyone in the same room to create this unified, holistic perspective of, we just are here to elevate the quality of life for our residents, and the visitors are the tool and the economic driver in that space. When we have the data, we do have the budget to collect data. We are the data experts in our communities. We do have all the information, and it should start with us to use that data to inform every entity that is needed in our communities to elevate that resident quality of life. If you want to have a developer come in and bring something big, guess what? We have the data that proves it. It expands far beyond visitation. It expands into the day-to-day for everyone. And I think what's difficult is that for so long, DMOs, as primarily funded by hotel occupancy tax, can't necessarily market within, and we've always marketed out, and that has given us years of backlash that we are constantly trying to go into, and that's why advocacy has been such a huge topic in conversation. We now have advocacy summits. Why? Because for years, we weren't advocating for ourselves, and we started seeing our funding just completely plummet. Now, it's almost like it's gone completely on the other side, and we're having so much information and so much conversations on how to advocate that we're going 200, 300 times speed and trying to get the rest of our communities to get on pace with us. And I see, because we have so much pressure with that, the CMO, the COO, and the CEO typically take on these roles of being that external force and that external conversator of, I want to do this, I want to do that, this is the data, this is what we do. And we want to prove value for, one, keeping our funding, but two, showing that we do have this tool and we really want to be able to unify as communities to make our residents have a better quality of life. And now, as CMOs, the value conversations have been, I would say, like more than half of my job. I put the media planning on my senior director of marketing, who helps that day-to-day media flow. I have actually, we're going through a restructure right now within the marketing team to get them all autonomous in how to create that media flow, media structure from a leisure side, a B2B side, a advocacy side. Like, there are so many different verticals that we now oversee. And for us to be that external value person that is trying to prove that to maybe more than one board, it begs the conversation of, how stretched can we go? And what is the priority? advocacy is going to be huge for making sure we stay relevant, but also prove the relevancy, because we do have that. But at some point, when does it stop? When do we go actually too far into these things? And we need to get our other governmental entities up to speed with us. How do we get them to do that? I don't know.
Yeah. You see why I wanted her to talk about it.
So we started our 2026 planning a couple of weeks ago. And the question I asked my team was, at the end of December 31st, 2026, what would you be proud of? And so one of the things that several people came back with was a better connection with our industry partners, our stakeholders. It was very interesting to me to understand how many of my team felt very strongly about that issue, because they get that it's important. And so, but I had to say to my team, okay, guys, what of this is ours to actually own? And we don't own that. Like, not historically. We, to her point, as the CMO, we developed a campaign for National Travel and Tourism Week, always here. You don't see me really highlighting the impact of visitors in our market and helping our stakeholders understand that they're always there, contributing $800 million in economic impact, 7 million visitors. Like, they're in your shop, they're in your restaurants. Even if you don't see them, they're always here. And so we ran the campaign for a month. We felt like the campaign was a huge success. I mean, we had partners who participated in the campaign with us. So we had, I think, 49 partners. We saw a 2,374% increase in our tourism landing page for that campaign. So it had the statistics, all the things about what we do. That was really great engagement. And so, again, to our point, somebody's got to do it. Like, and the answer is not just, well, that's not my job, so I'm just gonna let somebody else do it. But you have to be engaged. I mean, and for me, because I've run a DMO, I get it. Like, you have to always be focused on that. And it's not about playing defense, it's about playing offense every day. 365 days a year, you got to be focused on that. Because if you're not, you're behind and you get swallowed up quickly. So you have to play an offensive game all the time. And that means constantly talking about the things that you're doing. We share campaign results. We put it on LinkedIn. We put it on social media. Like, we put those things in places where people can see them. Like, I love that y'all have an advocacy summit. We've talked about things like that, but we felt like that we can't get the people in the room who really need to be in the room. And that's the challenge that we have.
I would say that, and you've been, to your point, in both sides of it, and clearly it sounds like you agree, but to answer your first question, should the CMO be involved in advocacy? I think 100%, and if nothing else, because then you're seeing on the front line, what are some of the questions that are coming, what are the thought logic that's coming across the table that may not make sense to you, you may not agree with it, but you need to hear what your CEO is hearing. You need to hear when the stakeholders don't care about how great the marketing is or how well it's performed, because what they really care about is this or that or the other. So I think if nothing else, the education and the awareness that you get as the CMO to be involved in advocacy then helps you to go back and figure out, what can you do to fine tune your message to help, whether you're delivering it or whether you're CEO or someone else is. But if you're not engaged, then all it is, from your point of view, is going to be them telling you that this isn't working or it isn't good enough, but you don't really know the why. Here's your chance to understand the why. Whether you like it or not, it's up to you, right? Yeah.
And I think, to your point, if you're not in it, then you don't have the full understanding of how to approach the situation. Mm-hmm. And so, again, you have to be listening. And again, I think it's not just the CEO who's responsible for delivering our advocacy message. I think everybody in the organization has an opportunity to do that. I mean, certainly for us, we put people in Rotary, Kiwanis, every civic organization that we have, like, you have an opportunity to say, hey, you need a presentation this month? We're happy to come and present about those things. Again, building the advocacy. And also, it's about building the relationship with those people who have the connections to those other people that you need. And so if that is a matter of, I got to, cozy up to Bob, who knows Sally, to help do that, then it's what you have to do. So it's just a proactive approach to having continuous conversations that move the needle and also help you protect, maintain, defend all the money that you need, and also to maybe get more money that you need.
Yeah. Go ahead, Trish.
One of the things that I would love to see happen is some DMOs to band together and put out a value of tourism campaign that we could use across multiple destinations. I've thought from an industry leadership standpoint, DI or Brand USA or US Travel, somebody could do that. I mean, coming from an agency background, we used to co-op stuff all the time. You know, we could all pay into it. We don't have the money to do it all together, but is there a way? Because I think we would all benefit tremendously from everybody understanding that that visitor is always there, that that visitor income is going back to the quality of life. People in our destinations don't put those dots together, and we don't have the bandwidth to come up with that along with all the other things that we're doing. So if anybody's
it would also
interested,
help to have multiple organizations putting that together so that your stakeholders aren't just like, well, Trish is just trying to tell us how great she is, right? But it's actually, the industry as a whole. That's a
great idea. That's an amazing
interesting idea.
if anybody wants to sign on.
I was signed on to that today. But I would say, again, to Emily's point, when we did our campaign, I was like, I'm going to get my handed to me, because I felt like people in the community may have something negative to say, and we got nothing but positive comments on the campaign. Really,
no one complaining about you spending money, on residents or what,
Yeah, it's hard because the ROI for our typical metric isn't
we kept
there.
the campaign local. We did it on a small budget, $10,000. I used AI to help develop pieces of that campaign. Some of the graphics were in part AI generated. And so, again, it worked well, but I was really concerned that people were going to be like, you're spending tourism money on this. But we set a goal of just, 10,000, keeping it small.
People forget visiting friends and relatives accounts for like 50% of travel in a lot of places. So why not spend a little bit of money for some community pride or community stakeholder support? I think it's pretty intuitive. The trick is educating people the right way so they understand why it's intuitive. Who wanted to add to that?
I'll just say I'm smiling because I'm building out my first billboard campaign in probably like 20 years.
Nice.
And the reason, first of all, we're on I-95, we're trying to get people off, but it's more to show what we're doing to local community. And I got in a great situation in Richmond again. Our community relations team is as big as our marketing team. That's our CEO, Catherine O'Donnell. She built that up, and she built out RVA and Black RVA. So we use that to promote. But yeah, we're doing local TV now. I'm not sure. No one gives us any problems with that, but for the first time. And that's our TID committee saying we have to show what we're spending the money on. Everybody's hearing now, we doubled your marketing budget, so let's show it. So stay tuned, but I think you're coming down 95 and you see our billboards come on off. But yeah, it's the first time in 20 years I've even talked to Lamar. So, but that's the reason.
Our local news station, we found a way to create spots that we keep year round.
Do you pay for them?
So here's the loophole.
We pay.
Every news station has a sales team, sells ads. Guess what? Most of those stations are ABC affiliates, NBC affiliates, and have a network of other stations outer market. So what you do is you talk to the sales team, get in good with that news entity, and make a deal. I will buy all these ads out of home if we can secure a PSA spot year round. And it's a PSA. So real PSAs don't air at the prime time. They air at like 3 a.m. But if there's a way that you could leverage that relationship, you can get an all year round spot at no cost, but you're paying for all of these advertising. So it's almost like a partnership deal. And that's what we've done for the past 4 years with our local news station. And we sometimes use it as a co-op for festivals and events. We use it for Travel and Tourism Week. We switch out that commercial spot every time we get, but great loophole for not using your taxes or your dollars in market.
I'd be curious if you guys do something similar, but so we partner with as a state, right, and as many states, 90+% of our budget is spent out of state. So, but we get hit up by every in-state media market, vendor all the time. We have a relationship with the North Carolina Broadcasters Association, where we, contribute to their foundation, and that contribution gets us, PSA airtime, both in TV and in radio, that we then use to kind of figure out how we're going to fine tune that message and go with it. And that's sort of our way of getting around having to spend money in state when we need it. So there is a cost value related to it, kind of different than yours, but that's one thing that's worked well for us at a state level to kind of around that idea of PSAs that are out there and how do you leverage it. So.
Is there anyone else using any creative ways to get in market with their messaging?
I think for us, so kind of similar, maybe not to the full 90%. When I started, Pennsylvania historically did almost all marketing in state and very little out of state, and we've changed that in the last year. But we still keep between 20 to 30% of our marketing budget to in-state audiences. It's a big state. If I'm going to drive from corner to corner, it's a 6-hour drive. I'm still an overnight market in state, but also for a lot of our smaller DMOs, Philly is their biggest market, even if it is, again, in the same state for us. But again, going back to some of those partnerships that we talked about, that's how we're leveraging some of that in-state spend, working with the Eagles, working with different professional sports teams, sponsoring the big New Year's Eve fireworks in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and getting some ad outlets throughout their sponsorships and events throughout the year to help kind of offset, A, to make it a little bit of a community partnership, but B, still speak to some of those audiences that are, looking for things to do in and around without going out of state.
I remember how we got around it now. The station we're using, their coverage, the farthest spot is 51 miles out. So then we were able to show that. We'll see. Stay tuned again, but it's being received well. So yeah.
We conducted it was the first time it was ever done, a resident sentiment survey. We're doing 2 waves every year for the next 3 years. And the city asked us, why are you doing that? Why are you and the partnership with the city has kind of been flipped on its head, where they actually super appreciated it, because we're doing this to share. We're doing this to explain how we can better convey the power of tourism. And I mean, we're in a little bit of a unique situation with Mickey, obviously being in our backyard. So the question always comes well, doesn't that kind of market itself? And so for us, a lot of those learnings, both on the M&C side, largest convention center on the West Coast, along with Disney, you're kind of looking at it well, where do you guys fit in? And the residents overwhelmingly are telling us we want you to talk more about the local businesses and the hidden gems and the places that people can come and experience beyond that. We're yes, that is our strategy. That is what we're pivoting towards right now. So for us, that's been extremely powerful to both strengthen the relationship directly with the city, as well as kind of help us target and understand how to communicate the value of what we're doing better ourselves. So something to throw in there.
There have been a few situations I've had recently where, being in this position new-ish for the last year, so I think about advocacy from a different lens even. Just in the last couple weeks, there was a teeny tiny little town in north central Pennsylvania that their biggest visitor economy is outdoor recreation and ATVing. So I am an outsidey, not outdoorsy. That's not my vibe, but they have one gas station in the town, one gas pump, at a little mom and pop thing, and it closed. And that was the end of tourism for them. So our governor came to the table with funding through the tourism office to help reopen that. And that's a lens that I think people don't think about until that happens to them. That town has probably never thought about that one gas pump fueling their tourism economy, but as soon as it wasn't there, then they did. So how can we as the state office help to supplement some of those things, especially in our super rural areas?
Well, and then what kind of credit do you get then with the residents for being the one that helped reopen that? I think that's really great.
Per our master plan, our 10-year master plan, we're playing the long game. And so really, I think, and I will hang my hat on this one, I really think that getting into the schools is what needs to be done. We need to be talking to these kids from kindergarten on about why tourism is important. And so we have the Student Tourism Exploration Program, and I have STEP, and I have 50, now I'll have 70, so as of September, I'll have 70 STEP kids And 11th and 12th graders that I take out once a month, and I show them all the cool things that you can do in tourism and hospitality and how this is a career. It's not just a job. And so for me, it's like playing that long game. How do I get in there, talk to these schools, and really advocate from the get-go, because we got to raise them this way. We got to raise them. Back in the day, they used to joke about like Pepsi getting in there and trying to take over the schools and become, instead of Coke, it was Pepsi. You guys remember that conversation? I don't know. Anyway, so that's what I'm like thinking, long game.
Same thing, and we pull different people from our organization with different expertise and backgrounds. So we've got our social media person, we've got our BI to show the breadth of careers that we can go through, and it's wildly successful in all of the schools throughout Anaheim and Garden Grove.
I don't think that we do enough in that.
Not at all. Yeah. And it's a huge piece, again, I think, to build the tie with the community and let them know that this is a larger conversation. It goes back to the advocacy question, right? Like, what role do we play and why is it important on that local level? It's a huge win for us.
That's so interesting because it's got staying power, because politicians change, right? They cycle out. And so you start at ground zero, but when you're doing the kids, and I mean, anyway, I just comment. That's
the kid comes home and says to their mom, I just learned about tourism, and this brings like police and fire. It pays for my policemen.
Wow. Sorry.
We talked about that a little bit last week in passing, just like the gap of education about tourism and in tourism. I got my master's through Temple's hospitality school during COVID, and there was like one teeny tiny bit about destination marketing. Then I had like an MBA stats class, and math makes me cry, and like just things that didn't really fit what I was looking for necessarily. And I don't know that I've seen a program. So I love that you're doing that, because I think when people think about leisure and hospitality workforce, to know like negative on it, but it's the hotels, it's the restaurants, it's the attraction. This side of the table often isn't represented. And how do we make sure that we are educating that next generation of people? Because when I started in this industry, I didn't know it existed. I just kind of fell into it, and then I was like, this is cool, and here we are. But there is like a gap in just that understanding of what it can do, what it means, and it's not just, again, not to undermine like being at a hotel or being at a restaurant or something, but it's a different avenue that people don't think about.
One thing we did when I was in Columbus, which was kind of like the penultimate example, and I don't know if they still do it because it was a massive undertaking, but we took all of the freshman orientation for the Ohio State University. So about 15,000, bust them down to Nationwide Arena and put on an entire program for them on the like value of tourism in the community. And it was initially intended really to focus on talent, retention, and getting them to not leave town when they graduate in 4 years. If we can get them now, then by the time they're 4 years out, they're never going to leave. But the halo effect of it was understanding how deep tourism was in the area, and to your point, the different subsectors and what it meant. And it was a cool, fun, engaging. We brought tastemakers and artisans and kind of made it fun and interactive, and it wasn't boring and stale. But that was a really cool example that could be replicated at a smaller level with anyone that has a university or a school in their town, that I think could have now, at the time, looking back on it, could have intentionally two purposes to it.
Yeah. I'm obviously a little outside looking in, right? I haven't been in a DMO, but based on the conversation that we had, Emily, and what I've seen, I kind of feel like the need for the CMO to be involved in advocacy is directly correlated to the impact level of the initiatives that they're trying to lead. So if you are maintaining the status quo, not taking very many risks, being out in the community isn't a big deal because you don't have a lot that you need to defend. However, if you're trying to get out of the sea of sameness, do something completely different, put up a billboard when you haven't done it in 20 years, at that point you kind of need the community to be on board so that you're not hanging out to dry when somebody doesn't like that you made that decision, right? And so I think your feeling of need to be involved in advocacy, not adequacy. That feeling should be directly related to the, I guess, possible danger of what you're doing and the amount of change you're trying to initiate. And so I would say if you don't feel much need to be out in the community, you're probably not being aggressive enough on the marketing side.
would completely agree. And this guy knows that because the very first thing that I did when I came on board was bring on Symphony Attribution to defend the impressions that we were about to generate in very unconventional places. And it's been a massive win in our boardroom, like massive win. And he can speak to that too, so.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I think I can say there's another friend who called and said, hey, we want the data. We want to be able to tell our story. We want to be the most, important centralized hub in the community. And we said, you should also consider whether us or some other solution, go with us. You should consider media impact calculator, website impact calculator, because you're spending so much money and you need to talk not in, I get the room nights thing, right? Like we had for TIDS and all that, because those boards care about that. But like the community, they care about jobs. And they're like, we have a great relationship with our board and our community and our electeds, don't need it. Month and a half later, and I'm not gonna reveal who this is, so if you're watching, I'm sorry. Hey, they're trying to take our funding. We have 2 weeks to prove it, and we need something. Can we get that thing? And it's like, we don't have we didn't measure your stuff. So like, no, I'm sorry. You can get it now, but it will not help you right now. And so in my mind, this question is super important. CMO should be there. Most times the CEO doesn't understand the nuance of what you do. They don't have to. They're really trying to play defense. And so if you don't hear it through your own ears and say, no, actually what they really need is this, there could be a disconnect. And I think I think as an industry, we massively under-promote ourselves, and we have to figure out those loopholes and billboards and all that. And that's what makes me nervous is like, again, this week, Friday, a CEO called, same thing. In a week, they're gonna try, or 10 days, they're gonna have me present on why they shouldn't take our funding to offset their deficit. Can you give us a study? And I'm just thinking like, she was so happy 2 weeks ago when I saw her in Colorado. It's catching people off guard because you have these like activist politicians that need to do things. So anyway, definitely get whatever tools you can to defend yourselves.
And again, we're maybe in a little bit of a unique situation, but the knock on us is and we have, our relationship with Disney is sky high. Like they're tremendous friends of ours, but the knock is always, well, Disney sells itself. And again, I'll plug it for you, Zeke, so you don't have to feel like you're selling it here. It has allowed for us to be able to say, yeah, like by all means, this percentage of people are going to as we want them to. But the other percentage of people are going here and into your district there and spending this much. And that has been a total game changer in the conversation.
Yeah. The key that we're doing, and again, I would say with whoever you work with, what you need to do is you need to fight this urge to say 300 to 1 ROI. That is you lose all credibility with that. And when we were building it, we were saying, some of us were saying like, hey, don't you think like the numbers are going to be smaller if we only show the lift? But at the end of the day, in the environment that we're in where it's changing, you have to have a control group. You have to look at the visitation of those who are coming without seeing your stuff versus those who are coming while seeing your stuff. And the delta between those two is what you report out. If you're not doing that, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to be in headlines. The other thing that I would say, I was talking to a top 25 destination about the city is trying to take their budget, their TID, because they said, well, the destination says, well, we exploded, we over exceeded our goal. And they said, yeah, which means you no longer need the recovery money, so we're taking it because you did such a great job. And so they're like, well, what can we do to keep it? And I explained some of what we're doing, and they said, it was interesting to me. They said, oh, wow, if we could connect our media budget to jobs, they want to avoid the headlines that they killed 100,000 jobs. They don't care that we did great, but they do not want to say that they're connected with killing jobs. So that was interesting to me. A different kind of defense is if you communicate in terms of negative headlines. I mean, but like that's a deterrent to we're going to come take your funding. It was a new kind of concept for me.
Did it work for that?
They didn't do it yet. I'm still like they're waiting. I was going to fly in, meet with the CFO of the city, and got kind of moved. So we're still working on a date.
So let me ask you a question, because I think what you said is spot on. For smaller organizations, or organizations that don't have like media within their town to be concerned about the headlines. So what's the strategy for those type of organizations?
If they don't have an advocacy problem, I would say, then it's just about growing your budget, because it's usually a CEO of one, maybe they have a part-time staffer, and they're trying to see how can we make this more relevant in this town. In that case, I would say you need data to tell the story of what impact you are having, and take that around to those leaders and say, did you know that, I'll give you an example. They're not as small, but Amanda in Elkhart County, she said, we have a truck stop and we want more truckers to stop here, and we want to see that they stop here, and we want to communicate out that we are helping them to stay here for a certain amount of time. I was like, wow, that's interesting. And she's running a campaign to do that. To me, that doesn't sound like a big destination initiative, but she's going to use that to advocate for more budget to do more things like that. And it's one of the most innovative campaigns I've heard of. So that would be an example where she's not doing it to keep her funding, but more so to tell a story that gets probably more funding, which I think a small destination could totally do.
Scott, you made a good point about how we communicate to each district member and how we use that to relay our efforts, for advocacy perspective. We're building right now a resident sentiment campaign based on the resident sentiment study results. We also do one every 2 years. And after unveiling those results, it's one thing to have a town hall, have everyone come in, reveal the results, put out a press release, here's what we got. But oftentimes that just dies, and nothing gets done after that, other than the DMO, leading that charge. This is information the city needs. This is information the media needs. We have to do a tour, essentially, and do it in a one-to-one format. So for this resident sentiment campaign that we're looking to do, we have talked about how we can go to each councilman and talk about their district. What are your priorities? What do you want for your district? What is it that you love from a local business perspective? Or what do the residents care about that you care about? Also, leveraging election years, which is coming up. And if we can get in a room with every council member and communicate the needs, or communicate their needs, but also give them solutions and the results that we have in their own way, it's going to take a lot of time, hence the external job of the CMO that is now shifting. But we have to get in those rooms. We have to have those conversations so that we can start one by one changing the minds of how important we are, so that when it does come to a board vote on funding, you already have everyone in your corner.
Yeah, we have, there's a massive economic development, OC Vibe, that's being built in Anaheim. And because of how popular this resident sentiment survey has become, they wanted to sit down with us and say, what are people looking for? We want to put out free local programming. Sure, farmers market's great, all that's fine. But what does that look like? And we're like, funny you should ask, we're putting together a comedy and culinary festival, and there's this opportunity. So it has transcended even, you're totally right, on the political level. But I think that as it has caught wind with some of our board members and trickled down, we have seen from a massive development like OC Vibe to walking into one of our restaurants and talking to them about how important they're gonna. So it has had already a very quick effect on it that I cannot underestimate the importance of.
I love that. I think we've done a good job of establishing CMOs better be involved in advocacy, right? I think we kind of have gotten into that. I'd like us to take a break for a few minutes, and when we come back, I want to dive more into the tactical. What are the tips and tricks? How are you engaging your community? What metrics are you reporting on? What do they value? Because I really would like for other CMOs or even just marketers in our industry to understand how to structure that correctly. I think there's disparate processes, there's disparate metrics, and if we could do anything to kind of help influence a consistent reporting and process mechanism for marketing the marketing, I think it would be really good. So let's take a quick break and we'll come back and chat about that.